We're going to go over a lot of shit about survival mode right now. So if you feel like you're in it or you are having trouble navigating it, you're going to want to save this. My name is Trish. I'm a trauma-informed life coach, and helping people transcend survival mode and get into thriving is my jam. I always say I play equal parts defense and offense. I like to work on your trauma. I like to see what's holding you back, and then we can see how that plays into the leveraging tools that we can use to move you forward in your life. So survival mode, right? Survival mode is basically a collection of thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors that are keeping you in a state that makes you feel certain. It's kind of crazy to think of it that way. You know, if you look at survival mode from that perspective, it gives you a different idea about why people stay there for so long. So let me explain, because there's another mode above survival mode, and it's important for you to understand that, because the question I get most often, in fact, I had a video that went viral, I don't know, like in May, kind of outlining the brass tacks of survival mode. And the most asked question on that viral video was, how do I get out? I understand what it is. How do I get out? So let me explain that. So let's just do quickly one more crash course in survival mode. Survival mode is an emotional landscape that you find yourself in again and again and again. Survival mode sounds often like, I don't have enough money, this keeps happening to me, I'm not good enough, I'm scared all the time, I have a lot of anxiety. In other words, they're very difficult emotions to navigate, and repetitive circumstances that we can't seem to get ourselves out of, or they repeat again and again, and we start to believe that is just the reality that we're meant to live in. Hopefully that makes sense. So there's a mode above survival mode that I rarely hear talked about, and it is growth mode. And the funny thing about growth mode is that it is probably, I'm just going to say this is why people stay stuck in survival mode so long, is that if we think of survival mode at this level, above that level is growth mode. And truthfully speaking, growth mode is way harder, way more uncomfortable, and way less certain than survival mode. So I want you to think of survival mode as one reality, and then growth mode as a different reality. So when I was explaining this video, when I was talking about the survival mode mentality, people are like, yeah, I got that. That makes complete sense to me. How do I get out of that mode? Here's the shittiest truth of it. This is the shittiest truth. And forgive me for this being a long video, but it needs to be so I can explain this to you. If we decide that we want to get out of survival mode and we move into the next phase, which is growth mode, it's awful. Like so not fun, so not fun. And let me walk you through why. Okay, so we leave this reality and we walk into a different reality. You know, if we were looking at this from like a Hollywood standpoint, it would be like, oh my God, this person's leaving survival mode and they're gonna become a millionaire overnight. Good for them. They're having their Aaron Brockovich moment. So getting out of survival mode this is why it's so hard for me to explain this, because it's never the answer people want to hear. It's that you're going to have to sign up for more discomfort and more challenge in order to get out of survival mode. You know what I'm saying? So the first question I ask people that are like, how do I get out of survival mode? The response I typically have is another question, like, what are you willing to do to get out of it? Like, how much discomfort are you willing to face? How many things are you willing to change about yourself? How brave are you willing to be? So I'm answering a question with a question often when people are like, yeah, how do I get out? And I'm like, well, how ready are you to get out, I guess is the question. And I want to make it clear, survival mode is not about like people that are destitute and hovering by a trash can outside that's on fire so they can keep warm. I know millionaires, multimillionaires, people that are incredibly financially stable that are in survival mode. Because survival mode is really, I think, a place where you are so out of alignment with your authentic self that you begin to become very uncomfortable in that space. So what you're doing when you decide to move out of survival mode and into growth mode is you're deciding to be uncomfortable in a brand new way so the parts of you can develop, which is basically like kind of like Joseph Campbell, like the call to adventure. Like, are you going to be a fucking pussy about this, or are you going to actually do the things you need to do? So don't fucking ask the question unless you're ready for the answer. So how do you know you're in survival mode, right? And then we're going to talk about how to transcend into growth mode and what you're going to sign up for and what could potentially be on the other side and what it's really all about. Survival mode means you've seen the same pattern repeat in yourself more than 3 times. Let me give a few examples. Like you're in the same financial situation again. Same emotional experience, same story, same narrative, same role that you're taking on, same behaviors. You watch yourself get in the same financial situation. You watch yourself avoid, or you watch yourself bitch, or you watch yourself spin out, right? In relationships, you keep attracting the same person into your life again and again and again, and they betray you again and again and again. And then you go into the woe is me mode. You basically sleep under your covers and you don't get out of your bed for like 2 days. Or you have figured out that something isn't working in your life. For example, like let's say it was Thanksgiving and you're alone, you're all by yourself. And that's the last thing you wanted to be. You wanted to be surrounded by people that you love or a partner or these other things. And once again, you feel like you're the only one that's left out. Same story, same pattern, same situation. Now, if it was up to your ego's automated. It's going to create the same pattern again and again and again and again and again. So this is a great opportunity for you to see what your ego is doing to keep you in that reality. Growth mode means I want a new reality. And you're going like this, like there's a part of you, there's a version of you saying, okay, come on with me over here. Are you sure that you want that? Every person says, yes, of course I do. Until they figure out they're typically going to have to face more discomfort in that new reality transcending through that membrane than they experienced when they were in survival mode. In other words, the ego is always going to bring us into the automated place of better the devil you know than the devil you don't. You know what I'm saying? So growth mode means you're going to have to face different discomfort emotionally, and you're going to have to meet that discomfort with different thoughts, patterns, and behaviors. In other words, growth mode means you're going to have to adopt components of a new belief system, a new value system, and ultimately an updated identity. This means people that have always seen themselves as broke and victims are going to have to begin to adopt components of themselves that are going to be worthy of wealth and stop blaming themselves and everybody else for their problems. People that find themselves in the same relational situations again and again are going to have to examine the role that they're taking on in that pattern, and they're going to have to decide that they would like to not play that role anymore. In other words, I'm not going to play the role of the person who consistently seems to attract people that betray me. In other words, I'm going to have to build some more intrinsic self-trust, become a little bit more discerning, work on my childhood trauma a little bit, and see why this keeps happening to me, and while I keep tolerating these high levels of dysfunction, and stop tolerating them. People that find themselves to be alone when they want to be surrounded by people are going to have to confront the parts of themselves that may be pushing people away and be very honest. It's very uncomfortable. And then they're going to have to be able to acclimate to that new reality, which is going to take some time. If I ever had a PR for a client, or like an athlete, they say they PR'd on a deadlift at like 125. To get them to 150 deadlift was going to require them to lower their reps and increase their tolerance to discomfort, so they could become the athlete that could lift the 150 deadlift. And they would have to leave the 125 deadlift version of themselves behind. You see what I'm saying? And when we acclimate to that different reality, which is a different frequency, this is when we begin to attract more and manifest more. And then the hardest part is acclimating to the good stuff. Because if your ego doesn't know what good feels like, it's going to take time for your ego to not assess goodness as a threat. Long story short, deciding to go into growth mode means you're deciding to go into more discomfort before you're able to access this new version of yourself. Not for pussies, but very, very effective if you're brave enough to do it. It's my favorite thing to do with people.